everybody. Thank you for joining us again on Amir's Anecdotes. Today I have a very good friend of mine joining me. His name is Ben Kitzen. Thanks for joining us.
Hello, Amir. Thanks for having me on.
So, Ben, why don't you go ahead and introduce yourself for the listeners?
Yeah, I'm Ben Kitzen. I'm a born and raised Long Islander. So I grew up in the town of Huntington. So Amir and I have met through our local community here. I'm an insurance broker by trade. So I specialize in employee benefits. So all things group, health, life, accident, everything that an employer will offer to their employees as a benefit. I'm also a firefighter here in Huntington. So I've volunteered in my community coming up on 13 years. So over a dozen years of service, and I'm a legacy. I followed my father into it. So he's been a member servant here for about 40 years or so now. Yeah, I'm excited to join. This is candidly my first podcast. So
that's great.
Yeah,
good.
I'm excited.
Well, that's kind of the premise here, right? Is I want to interview real people going through real problems. And that's really cool. I didn't know you were a volunteer firefighter. That's great. So like a real firefighter, not like in Fahrenheit 451 where like the firefighters burn books, right?
Right. No. This is real firefighting. We do a lot, working with our neighbors, so neighboring communities, but primarily here at Huntington, anything as far as structure fires, motor vehicle accidents, you name it. I've kind of done it over that amount of time, including cats out of trees. I have done that before.
Have you really? Is that a real thing? I thought that was like a joke that happens. That's a real thing?
And yeah, it does happen. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I want to hear so much more about that, but we have other things to talk about. So maybe we'll circle back.
Sounds good.
So Ben, you said you're an insurance broker. What kind of got you into that industry?
So I like to help people. Like I mentioned with the fire department, I care about taking care of others and being in service of others. I also have had a lot of experience with sales. So my sales journey, my professional experience has kind of led me in an upward trajectory. And that's what got me into health benefits, employee benefits primarily. I like to help people, and it's a product I can feel really good about. Everyone really needs this. More than 60% of the United States gets their health insurance through their employee benefits programs. And so I can really feel good about what services I deliver, knowing that it really is filling a need, and I'm able to advocate for my clients in that same way that I give back to the community here locally.
Got it. Wow, that's really cool. So then, and how long have you been in that industry?
I've coming up on about 3 years with USI. Before I was in the insurance space, I worked in human capital management, which was more of the payroll, HR, information systems, technology. So a few roles prior to this one that were more tech focused. Part of what drew me to USI was their use of technology when it comes to client advocacy and arming those companies with competitive intelligence to make the most informed decision making.
And how old are you now?
I'm 31 right now.
You're 31. So 3 years ago you were only 28.
Yeah. So
where'd you go to school? What did you graduate for? What's your degree in? And then tell me more about that journey. Like what kind of brought you here?
Yeah. So I went to the University at Albany, so part of the SUNY system. I graduated there with a bachelor's degree, actually in philosophy, believe it or not.
No kidding.
Yeah. I knew I was made to really just thrive on interactions, interpersonal communication. So I studied what I was interested in.
Sure.
A little over pragmatic on my part, but I studied what I found interesting, and I did internships during college that helped me come out of school right away with a full-time job at a known, national, international corporate entity that helped me really upskill on my, management training type of programs. With the out of college role, I've moved into different tech sales roles. And that was what brought me towards the human capital management, and then what brought me over to USI after that.
Gotcha. So you've always been more like techie, salesy than HR,
Sure.
payroll-y. And your role in that HR payroll, was that also salesy, or you were?
It was. It was.
Okay, got
it was a little bit of sales, a little bit of client management, account management. But it was really sales focused.
Got it. Okay. So then, now, as a 31-year-old New Yorker, right? What are all the different ways that you would identify yourself?
Definitely geographically, you nailed one. And if people know Long Island, there's also some, identity associated with your township. Huntington has its own identity, and I definitely identify as a Huntingtonian, a Long Islander, of course. Affiliations as far as the fire service, my college, and the industry I work in. I think those are a few different ways.
As you think back on that journey of those different careers you had, that college education, that New York lifestyle that you've had now, I think it's fair to say that you're almost on like your third occupation in your career. When you think back on that, what is the most stressful or difficult financial situation that you've ever been in?
Well, yeah, I mean, any of those changes, there's always a little bit of uncertainty. You're really not sure the direction in which things may go. I would say that I've always kept my opportunities open. So generally, when I moved on to a new role, while there is uncertainty, there's also, I'm someone who craves stability. So I really am strategic in my choices with things like that. Financial concerns, though, to your real question, in the last few years, one of the things I have had front of mind is purchasing a home. And I've rented for a long time. I've rented since the fall of 2016. So almost 10 years renting. I mean, it's covered 8 years, basically. In October was when I, initially made that first, rental move. So I had been renting for a long time. Around summer of 2022, possibly fall into summer 2022, I did very seriously look at houses. I went through the process of a pre-approval. I worked with, financial consultants in my purview, individuals I work with, went to my bank, my credit union to get a pre-approval on my own, not looking for a parent to co-sign, looking to be a true first-time home buyer. Of course, that's a stressful process. And the housing market then, as it is now, was incredibly competitive, especially, again, geographically where we live. But
oh, yeah, tell me about it.
Yeah. And I ended up not making a purchase. I had put in offers on different houses, and it didn't go my way. And, by the time I was maybe 8 weeks into the total process, interest rates had skyrocketed so high that, I think my pre-approval was like 5.25%, which for at the time, and with a credit union, they're nonprofit institutions, I thought it was very well. And when it came time to initially do that renew that pre-approval, rates were closing in on 8%. It's how they skyrocketed. And it was really like at that point, the house that I wanted, I had been able to get. I would have been getting something much smaller that needed much more work in an area that wasn't as sought after for me. And then, I kind of just made an intentional spot at that point to set it aside and potentially come back to it at a later date.
Wow. So you actually, in that stress of that, achieving that financial position of buying a house, you decided to kind of forego that dream a little bit.
For now, at least. Yeah. I mean, and since then I've gotten engaged, and my fiancée and I have more, I bring a lot of that long-term planning aspect financially into the relationship, whereas she's just a very, very smart saver. Where we kind of make a perfect match like that.
Hey man, that's half the battle, honestly, right? Being a smart saver.
Yes.
So tell me a little bit more about kind of that process. So what are the feelings that you're feeling? You're trying to buy a house, interest rates are skyrocketing. Are you falling a little bit into like a depression, or how does that feel for you to then just let go of that process?
Sure. I mean, it's definitely an anxious experience. I'm happy I didn't commit myself to a house that I would have been, cash poor being in a home. I didn't want to put myself into that position. So, I think, and the market's come around, and again, style-wise, I have a good opportunity in the next few years and a good partner to be able to do that. But it's an anxious buying experience. So you feel a lot of it, and you're digging up all of your financial history. You're making sure where your debts are, and, what collateral can you bring for down payments? You're looking at all of your investment accounts and things of that nature to say, okay, what's something that is tax sheltered, tax deferred, or something that, you can use to borrow against, theoretically, retirement or whatever it might be. You're really digging into everything, which is quite quite stressful. You're working with a mortgage banker or broker to be able to say, based on all of my assets, all of my debt, what's the pre-approval that I'm looking like? So it's quite anxious because you're really lifting everything up and checking out what's under the hood.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I mean, it's like going through TSA, right? Like they're doing the X-ray on everything.
Yep, 100%.
So in that process, you're in this high stress, high anxiety. You're trying to buy a house. The world is almost conspiring against you with the way interest rates are going. Offers are not getting accepted. In that process, did you feel particularly like alone in that anxiety? Or because of the way you're talking about how you have that community around you, did you feel well supported?
Honestly, it wasn't something that I really spoke too much about. I kind of felt like I rolled up my sleeves and gritted my teeth and got through it, and we're at least speaking to some friends and some family members, just to convey like the stress of it all. But realistically, I kind of kept it to myself. I really kind of just, I again, for the mortgage pre-approval part, I was leaning on, my community bank, but wasn't really necessarily leaning on peers for that type of feedback or being a sounding board or whatever it might be.
Is there any of the different ways that you self-identify, right? A New Yorker, a salesman, an insurance broker, a firefighter. Like, was there any one of those ways in which you identify yourself that stood out to you as kind of like, I don't want to reach out to my peers or talk about this because it would impact my sales or the way they view me or anything like that?
I would say professionally, it was the one where I felt like I probably could talk about it a little bit more, because even in the insurance side, on the group side of it, we're all financial services professionals. So to be able to convey, the stress or the frustration around it, maybe those people understood more, and also that it would affect maybe my perception of others the least. If I bring that same conversation amongst even my peers in the fire service, you open yourself up to a little bit more of, even if it's lighthearted, ridicule. And even in the young professionals community, which I know you and I have done some networking together in, it's not talked about, the mental aspect of it, how much it affects your mental health. I think at the time I leaned on other means like, staying physically active and, things like that. Like, okay, hey, I don't feel great about all of that we just did for this mortgage process. Let's make sure we're getting all of our steps in daily and, the basics, back to basics, I would say.
Yeah. And then what about like the other professionals that you were working with in the process, right? The mortgage banker, the community bank, the real estate agent. Did any of that provide any kind of solace or help in that process?
It felt much more technical, and I don't really think it's a fault of the individuals. I think it's just kind of how the system is designed, that the financial advisor that I have, is telling me, what assets we have in that, investment portfolio or retirement portfolio that might be applicable as extra collateral for, capital for a down payment. It felt very almost clinical. I think maybe it'd be a fair way to say that there wasn't a lot of the, opportunity to share those raw feelings that kind of came up throughout the whole process.
It's interesting you say that, because in knowing you personally, right, you are someone that is enmeshed in the community with those people around you, but then, didn't leverage that, right, or felt like you couldn't. And to kind of put my financial advisor hat on, right, that's really what that job is, right? And part of the fiduciary obligation. Now, not all financial advisors are fiduciaries, right? Mortgage brokers certainly are not fiduciary advisors. They're not obligated to act in your best interest. They are only paid if they kind of push you to get the mortgage, right? The real estate agent only paid if you buy the house, right? And they get their commission. Similarly, with certain financial advisors, they're only paid if you give them the money to invest, right? And it's almost like they're operating almost against you if you're pulling money away from your investments to then buy a house, right? And it part of kind of the ethos that I have here is, in that seat, I think everyone needs to have that unbiased fiduciary advisor And I think that's kind of missing. And it sounds like that was missing in your journey here, where you had all these technicians around you and you didn't have that quarterback to help you out.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. I think it was more of, kind of going through the motions, and as a first-time home buyer, it's a little discouraging too to kind of get some of those, I think just more systemically, that's how it was kind of set up and not necessarily, the fault of the individuals.
Yeah. And so, it's interesting because now this is the first episode of Amir's Anecdotes where the guest that I'm interviewing is not on the other side of that stressful financial position. You're still deep in it, right? And almost kind of had to move the goalposts. For the best advice that I can give you really is every single guest that I've had on this show, the solution on how they got out of it, how they moved beyond that financial position, whether that was starting a business or failing in starting a business or getting accidentally pregnant, right? Or changing careers or having, massive tax liens against them. The solution every single time was leveraging their community around them and not being alone, not, digging deep in that feeling of loneliness. So I encourage you to really leverage the community that you've developed around yourself.
And it's good feedback too, because, even just you saying this, I started my financial planning process way earlier than most of my peers were. So it's something that I think early on in my early 20s maybe isolated me a little bit amongst my peers because I had that financial planning component already, that when it came time to initially take a first attempt at buying a house, I also kind of self-isolated almost because I think I was used to that experience from, 10 years prior where, 10 years prior where I kind of had that same sort of thing. I felt a little bit like alone in that experience, so I kind of doubled down on that. So I will. It's very, very good feedback.
Yeah, there's a lot of podcasts that exist, right, where people talk about personal finance. The unfortunate reality is the most popular ones are not licensed financial advisors, right? So there's no real legal element of them having to stand by what they say. And similarly, it sounds like you were doing your own financial planning. And one of the things that you should leverage is quality professionals and people in your community around you that you have access to. I see it all day, right? Where there's the one spouse who's doing the family's financial planning. The other spouse has no idea what's going on. And so they eventually do leverage their community and someone in their circle just so that there's a third party to give them that unbiased, advice and consultation.
Yeah, especially in a dynamic, money is always a little bit, not always, sometimes in a marriage or in a relationship, it can be and not everyone does everything the same exact way. People and couples are unique in that same sense.
Totally. And so, following that thread of you're still deep in this, what are your next steps now to kind of get you out of this stressful position? Or have you decided to let go of the stress and just, you're renting for a while until it's the right move?
That's I think is what the current plan is fortunate as far as rental to incomes, different than my situation was previously. So I think it is letting it go for now and not allowing it to stress us out just yet. It will be something, and it absolutely is a communicated goal of the two of ours that we will purchase, and we look to stay around the same rough geographic area, and we know the challenges that come with that. It's again, to your point that one handled money, one didn't, and then there was a third party brought in. I think we make that great pair because she's a very, very smart saver. I've been really focused in on the long-term financial play for a long time now. So much so that I can look at my retirement portfolios and say, okay, I'm not even 20 years to retirement. I'm 30 plus years to retirement, that I can look at just where I am now and what that will compound, and being able to have a little bit of flexibility within some of that, portfolio, that we really do make that great partnership. So yeah, house is on the agenda in the next few years. She wasn't part, my fiance wasn't part of the process with me previously. So it was really a solo, endeavor, which I think having you kind of said it before, strength and community. I think she's part of my tribe, and us being able to do that whole thing together makes it a little less stressful on me. Or at the very least, I have a partner to be able to share those feelings with. And then the financial side of it too, I think there's genuinely mutual benefit to both of us doing it together versus either one of us separately trying to. I don't want to wish her home buying experience on her own. I wouldn't wish that on her. I know how everyone handles stress and adversity, and especially that being financially driven. I don't think she'd be super happy doing something like that by herself.
No, I can't imagine that she would. So this is an interesting course. We might do maybe I'll invite you back and we do kind of a follow up as you follow the journey. But the really cool thing that I think you're doing here is the solution of getting out of your most stressful financial position, which is the question I ask every guest, is actually letting it go, right? And making different life choices, which, hey, you know what? You got to know when to hold them. You got to know when to fold them.
Yeah. And know when to walk away. I
know when to run.
totally feel you. And the other side of me too is it's not really a answer to yours. It's just more me. I'm overly prepared, and I started this long-term financial planning when I was, 22, and nobody's doing that. And I had a corporate job at college where I made enough money. I was living at home and putting everything into a stagnant, checking savings account. I wasn't doing anything like that. And I'm appreciative that I had a friend who, coming out of his college experience, got his first corporate job, was in that space and looking to kind of cut his teeth and do, I guess you would call it like a practice consultation. And me and him sat down and the conversation was like, oh, Ben, you actually should be doing this. I was I said I kind of was in a different situation than some of my immediate peers there. And that set me on that path, which is great. So, how would I avoid, more financial stressful situations is get ahead of it early on, be prepared for something that you hadn't foreseen. And again, I had conversations with family members at that same time period where they were like, well, why are you saving so much? Why are you putting all this money aside? And, I said, I'm saving for a rainy day and hoping it never happens.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And there's nothing wrong with that. And in knowing you and how you live your life, I mean, you still live a good lifestyle. You're not sitting there eating nothing but rice and beans,
Right. Yeah. You don't want to save so much that you don't, you forget to live your life. You have to be able to enjoy it.
That's right. So, Ben, that's really fascinating. And I'm glad that you're here to kind of share this journey with us. And hopefully you can come back and tell us how it goes on the other side. But for now, live and let go. And if anyone wants to reach out to you, whether they have questions about, volunteering for their local fire department or about, group health insurance, which is a whole topic in and of itself in this country, right? Or to talk about the stress of buying a home, how do they reach out to you?
So I'm most active on LinkedIn. So my LinkedIn is Benjamin Kitzenn. All my contact information is on there. And my USI email address is ben.kitzen@usi.com. That's my primary go-to email address.
That's great. All right. Well, Ben, thanks so much for joining us. And, hope to talk to you again soon.
Thanks again, Amir. Thanks for having me.